came out in 1988. This is John Cusack. This is a whole host of young actors of their time. This is sort of Young Guns, but baseball in terms of young actors of the late 80s. This is 8 Men Out. This is the story of the 1919 Black Sox Scandal, the World Series champion White Sox, or would have current or former World Series team that basically they threw the World Series because mobsters paid them off to throw the game. The title refers to 8 men from the White Sox team that were banned for life. This is also the reason why the Shoeless Joe character in Field of Dreams got banned from baseball. This is sort of that story, that original story of Shoeless Joe Jackson and the rest of the White Sox that were bought off, paid off, and kicked out of baseball for the integrity of the game for throwing the World Series. And this is back when the World Series is still big, but back then, the World Series was bigger than football, bigger than basketball hadn't been invented yet, or at least not the NBA. The NBA came along 20 years later. Football would not be the NFL starts in 1920, so baseball basically the only game in town, and this is back when everyone's traveling everywhere on train cars. So we get baseball at its biggest. You get a huge cast led by John Cusack as Joe, and the iconic line to the newspaper kid at the very end who's lost his faith. He goes, "Say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so." It's the kind of line that could, if it's delivered poorly, could be really sarcastic and made fun of, but because it's said with such earnestness and such faith and such a broken heart of a kid dealing with the heartbreak of hero worship and all that goes along with it in a great film. 8 Men Out is my number 3 film.
Yeah. DB Sweeney played Shoeless Joe Jackson in that movie, if memory correct on that, right? And am I allowed to curse on this or no? Am I going to keep this PG?
You already did a few times, so.
I don't think I did, but I'll say what crap about it was Shoeless Joe Jackson hit like 468 in that World Series. There's no way he was part of that. And he wasn't a really intelligent guy, believe it or not. You know that. He didn't know how to read. He wasn't a learned man. There's no way he was part of that. Where they were, yeah. I remember there's a TV show that I loved on HBO called Boardwalk Empire. And one of their seasons was Arnold Rothstein was telling the Steve Buscemi character, I'm involved in this scandal with the wife. Took place in 1919. That I'm involved with this scandal. And Arnold Rothstein's a real character. He's a real mobster in New York that was involved in that. And they used that. So it really happened. It's scary. We've gone through that with the NBA 20 years ago. But Shoeless Joe Jackson, and they did address it. I don't think he was. What do you think? I don't think he was involved in it.
I don't know. When you talk about very few people have hit 400 for a season in the history of Major League Baseball. The fact that he was able to, granted over a shorter time span, hit 400 in the World Series of all things. If he was throwing the game, he was making up for it stats wise other places.
Right.
I mean, you'd have to really go do a deep dive in terms of box scores and to really, I think, truly get a real sense of whether or not he did or did not. But if he did, then he was sure as heck making a case for himself before people find out that they threw the World Series. So, and you're right, John Cusack plays Buck Weaver. Clifton James plays the owner, the greedy owner, Charles Comiskey of Comiskey Park fame. Interesting too, the rest of this cast. You have Gordon Clapp, who's one of the big actors from NYPD Blue. You've got John Mahoney, who was the dad in Frasier. He was also in a couple of different 80s Cameron Crowe films. Michael Rooker playing Chick Grandil. David Strathairn in one of my favorite roles of his is Eddie Cicotte, the left-handed pitcher, so he was there. And also Charlie Sheen in another baseball movie playing Hap Felsch. Gotta say that. Hap Felsch. And you're right, D.B. Sweeney as Shoeless, Joe Jackson. This is also a film written and directed by Eliot, Asinof, and John Sayles, and directed by John Sayles. So, yeah, I think this is a film that is largely forgotten, I think, by a lot of people. Like, even if you look up on Amazon, I've tried to buy this movie a couple of times on Amazon, and my rule of thumb is never pay more than $10 for a Blu-ray. And this is a film that's been released on Blu-ray, but 8 Man Out did not get a wide release on Blu-ray, and it's like $30 every time I look it up. So I have not yet added 8 Man Out to my Blu-ray collection, although I'm always looking to see if it goes on flash sale or something. But this is one that has, I think, largely been forgotten, and even in the pantheon of baseball movies, it's a baseball movie, but it's a movie about scandal. So I think that's probably why it doesn't evoke a lot of the feels that people want to get out of a baseball film. So
true story.
Yeah, true story, and really well done too. It almost kind of sort of feels like a documentary, not documentary style, but it does have that feeling of weight of being a real story being told. And it feels like we're getting a realistic version of that story. It's not. It doesn't make the players look overly romanticized. It doesn't make the players like, oh, look at what they got forced into. No, this is something that there's a lot of peer pressure in seeing the dynamics of a team, the inner dynamics of a team, and also, before players were millionaires, how do you put food on the table? So this is a lot of the financial pressures that players were under, even in back when baseball was king, back when it was bigger than it is today. But without all the money that there is today. So, yeah, 8 Man Out, I think, has been forced from the public limelight, but still a great film.